So, someone talked about Michigan, so I have to at least. But I can't see any of you, so I just have to take it back off. All right, let's get started. Good morning. Welcome back to the Environmental Financial Advisory Board's fall meeting, 2023. We had just a fantastic day yesterday, and thank you everyone for joining in on a very, I would say, lively conversation, particularly Laurie Collins. I really appreciate the session that you put together yesterday. And we have a packed morning, so we'll get right to it, and I'll open the meeting, gavel open the meeting this morning, and turn it over to you, Carrie, for roll call.
All right, good morning, everybody. All right, we'll go alphabetical again. And let me know if you are here. I'm trying to see who's online. Ashley Ellen Jones. I don't see Ashley online yet. Courtney.
I'm here. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Ashley. Great. Courtney Black. Here. Steve Bonafonte.
Here.
Angela Montoya Brickmont. Present. Matt Brown.
I'm here.
Stacy Brown.
Here.
Al Cho.
Here.
Janet Clements. Let's see. Here. Oh, great. Lori Collins. Here. Zach Davidson.
Here.
Jeff Deal.
Here.
Sonia Favors. Here. Phyllis Garcia. Here. Eric Hangen is absent. Barry Hirsch. Not Craig Grinkovich.
Present.
Margot Kane is absent. Tom Carroll.
Here.
George Kelly.
Here.
Gwen Keys Fleming. I didn't see her on yet. Cynthia Kohler. Here. Colleen Kokas. Here. Joanne Landau.
Present.
Lawrence Lujan.
Here.
Great, Lawrence. Mariana Peavy. Here. Dennis Randolph.
Here.
Sanjeev Sinha.
Present.
Marilyn Waite. I don't see Marilyn online. Dave Wagner.
Here.
And Gwen Yamamoto Lau.
Present.
Great. All right.
I'm looking at Tara to see.
Yeah. They were online a minute ago.
As soon as I hear from Tara that our speaker is online, we'll go to our speaker. But because there are new speakers who weren't in attendance yesterday, and I think we have another speaker back there as well, Eli. I just want to remind everyone that this is a Federal Advisory Committee meeting, and it is a public meeting. We have folks who are joining us via webinar, as well as all deliberations of this group will be posted online after the meeting is over within 90 days. So I just wanted to remind that of the folks who didn't hear that yesterday. So Tara?
Well, the Phillies lost last night. I'm sad. My new adopted hometown. But your new adopted hometown.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that. Yes,
You did to me though.
to you, but I wasn't going to make it a public thing.
Publicly say it.
And my new adopted team too, Carrie. Apparently it hasn't happened perhaps ever that a team won the first 3 games and then lost the next 4, including 2 at home.
Oh yeah.
Philly is mourning this morning.
Those crowd shots at the last inning were pretty grim. They were.
We're all sad and tired.
Yeah, and Philadelphia is a big sports city, so I can imagine how bad things are for folks this morning.
There's always the Eagles. I was struck by how dark it was this morning. We're further north, right?
And I think we're still, is it still open mic? Okay, so I have to be careful in what I say to those people who really love living in Michigan, which I also do. But this is what usually looks like the entire winter here.
It's
Yeah,
dark,
I remember. I hope Jeff will attest to the as another witness. We always talk about how many shades of gray that we see during the winter in Ann Arbor. That's also true as well. So when I got up this morning, it just all the flood of all the winter memories came back to me. So yes,
That's
that's
what you were
right.
saying,
Yeah, that's
Stacy,
also the time zone.
But in other words, the body in 50 changed
is the bankers. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He's busy. Busy.
Okay. We can't. No. Yeah, so I apologize for this, and particularly those folks who are on the webinar as well. Dan must have been taken away. Our first speaker was going to be Dan Utek, who is our chief of staff, and he is not. He was on, but he's no longer. So we're trying to get him back. And we can't shift around the agenda this morning because I think we have a panel of speakers who are going to be here in person at 9:30, and not all of them have joined yet. So what I'm going to do is ask our webmaster to just pause until we can get back on schedule again. Thank you, and thanks for your patience, everyone. We're back. We're coming back, Carrie. Well, I think we have our guest speaker online now. Dan, are you online? He must be having a technical difficulty because this is Zoom. Dan, did you join us?
Sorry, I'll give him a couple of seconds.
At break, you can listen to it and see. Yeah. And I'm not even going to try to introduce him or give background because I want him to hear what I'm saying before we. Dan.
Morning.
Welcome. Were you having technical difficulties?
Just plain operator error, Ed. Just doing simple.
All right, welcome. Let me introduce Dan Utek. You've met him earlier in the year. Dan is the agency's chief of staff to the administrator, and Dan is one of the key people in the implementation of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund program at EPA, along with the folks in with Jahi and the folks in the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund office. And Dan has graciously agreed to come on this morning to give us an update on what's happened since the advisory committee provided the administrator with the set of recommendations about the greenhouse gas fund implementation. I think it was early January. So let me turn it over to you, Dan. I know that you also have a limited time available. So to you, Dan.
All right. Thank you, Ed. And good morning to you. Good morning, Carrie. I can see at least the two of you, and I can imagine the rest of the folks around the room. It's really nice to have this opportunity, at least to be with you virtually. I hope you're enjoying your time in Ann Arbor, and looks like you have an excellent agenda. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, excellent. So thanks for the invitation. I'm really glad to have a few minutes to come back to this group to provide an update for the EFAB on implementation of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. I'm going to focus on a couple of things related to the program this morning: the stakeholder engagement process that the agency went through, the launch of the competitions, and talk a little bit about those, and then briefly discuss the path forward from here. So on stakeholder engagement, when I last spoke to you, EPA was in the thick of a process, a really extensive process to gather input from a broad range of stakeholders to inform the design of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And of course, one of the inputs that we had early on was the work of the EFAB in response to the set of charge questions. And I want to again thank all of you for that hard work on a very short time frame. It was in the holiday period at the end of last year, and we really, really appreciate that. Helped to kickstart the efforts at the agency around GGRF. That input was part of an extensive process under which the agency heard from hundreds of individuals and groups representing communities and stakeholders across the country. We were able to do that engagement process in a way that gave us additional input, but also met the high standards of EPA's competition policy, which ensures that the competitive process under our grant programs remain fair and impartial. And so through that process, we were able to ensure that all interested stakeholders had an opportunity to share their perspectives, and at the same time took proactive steps to ensure the integrity of these important competitions. So a few highlights from that process include an October 22 formal request for information that elicited nearly 400 detailed submissions, responding to questions about program structure, eligible activities, strategies for maximizing private sector leverage, reporting processes on the impact of the funds, and other foundational design questions and decisions that the agency faced. In November last year, we hosted 2 national public listening sessions, which yielded more than 4 hours of public comments about the program. EPA also hosted more than a dozen targeted stakeholder roundtables focused on the RFI questions to solicit input from existing financing entities, labor organizations, environmental justice organizations, state environment and energy officials, and others. In March of this year, we held 2 public listening sessions regarding the design of the $7 billion solar competition to understand better how to accelerate deployment of solar energy to low-income and disadvantaged communities. More than 500 people attended those 2 sessions combined, and recordings from those sessions can be found on the GGRF website. In addition, we launched a GGRF Community Roundtable series with a trip to Houston, Texas in March of 23. That was a visit to a planned community solar facility, and it also included a meeting directly with community members to talk about that project and how this program might support projects like that in Texas and around the country. That series of engagements really was to try to meet stakeholders in neighborhoods around the country to share the impact of the program for renters, homeowners, small business owners, local government leaders, schools, nonprofits, all the folks that we hope will benefit from this program and who are looking to save on energy costs, reduce pollution, and create jobs and other benefits in their communities. EPA met with our local government advisory committee on several occasions to hear their recommendations for meeting the needs of local governments. We also drew upon discussions with the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, that's another EPA FACA, as well as the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council to help us think about how to design these programs to ensure that we're meeting the needs of low-income and disadvantaged communities. Finally, in April of this year, EPA released a 52-page implementation framework for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. We wanted to further transparency around the program and, importantly, maximize our ability to gather information from all interested stakeholders and to give all interested stakeholders an ability to comment on these programs. We got over 150 comments, detailed comments in response to the framework. So that's a at a high level an overview of the extensive stakeholder process that EPA ran around this program and kind of where the EFAB input fits into that. All of that information informed EPA's thinking about how to structure the 3 competitions that we announced early this summer. So I'm going to talk briefly about each of those. The $14 billion National Clean Investment Fund competition will provide 2 to 3 national nonprofit clean financing institutions funding, capitalization funding, so that they are able to partner with the private sector to provide accessible, affordable financing for tens of thousands of clean energy projects around the country. Once we make these awards next year, these entities in turn will provide financial assistance with a range of financial products to both project sponsors, so directly to projects themselves to deploy around the country, and to community lenders and other institutions, including community development, financial institutions, credit unions, green banks, and others to in turn finance projects. The financial products that will be offered out of these institutions and their sub-grantees will include will finance qualified projects that meet a set of criteria that include reducing or avoiding greenhouse gas emissions and other air pollution, delivering additional benefits to communities, mobilizing private capital, and other criteria. So that's the $14 billion National Clean Investment Fund. In addition, we launched a $6 billion competition under the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator banner. This competition will provide between 2 and 7 grants to hub nonprofits that will in turn deliver funding and technical assistance to build a clean financing capacity. And this will be focused really exclusively on community lending, working in low income and disadvantaged communities. And so these hubs, the 2 to 7 hubs, will in turn provide capitalization funding of up to $10 million through subgrants and or subsidies and technical assistance sub-awards for an additional $1 million to community lenders. That funding in turn will flow to eligible projects that meet the criteria that I described earlier. But also under this competition, we're focused on particularly 3 priority areas. So those are distributed energy generation and storage, net zero emissions buildings, and zero emission transportation. So there's a more targeted approach under the $6 billion CCIA competition than under the NCIF for those particular types of projects. And in addition, this $6 billion competition is focused exclusively on low income and disadvantaged communities. The $7 billion Solar for All program, which was launched in June, will award up to 60 grants to states, territories, tribal governments, municipalities, and nonprofits to expand the number of low income and disadvantaged communities primed for residential solar investment, enabling millions of low income households to access affordable, resilient, and clean solar energy. More specifically, we intend to make up to 56 awards to serve state and territory geographies, up to 5 awards to serve American Indian and Alaska Native communities, and up to 10 awards made to serve similar communities across multiple states. So grants that would serve more than one state. Really excited about that program and the benefits that it can provide, including home energy savings, energy resilience, improved air quality, and jobs around the country. So we launched those 3 competitions, Solar for All in June, the other 2 in July. And once those were out, we had webinars for each grant competition to provide stakeholders an overview of the application process, the submission requirements, and additional details about the contents of the funding opportunity announcements. We published several hundred facts on our website to help clarify questions that potential applicants would have. And then fast forward to October 12th, just under 2 weeks ago at midnight, the application period for all 3 competitions closed. And since then, the agency, the GGRF team and others at the agency have really been digging in and beginning a selection process, a rigorous process to review and score the applications that will culminate in selections by, we think, March of 2024. So that's where we are in the process. I can't say a whole lot about that selection process itself, but I did want to, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity to come here and give you all kind of an overview of the extensive engagement process we did, review the competitions that we announced earlier this year, and let you know that we've got a great set of applications in-house. We're working hard to score those now, get going on that, and super excited about the potential for this program next year and beyond to catalyze clean energy projects that provide a range of benefits in communities across the country. So very appreciative of the EFAB's input. That was an important component of a really broad outreach strategy that informed our competitions and the way that we structured the program. So I think I'll stop there, Ed and Carrie, and happy to try to entertain a couple of questions.
Thank you so much, Dan. I know the board really appreciates, I think there's a lot of affection for this program, given how much time was spent on the charge question. So we really appreciate you coming back and giving us an update. Any questions for Dan? Jeff? Please state your name for the record.
Thanks, Jeff Deal, Future Scope Advisors, for the record. Thanks very much, Dan, for that great presentation and overview. You said that you mentioned that you anticipate that you're going to make the announcements of the awards in March. How soon after that do you anticipate that capital will start flowing after the announcements?
It's a great question. I think, from the selection point forward, we then have to negotiate award agreements with with the recipients. I think we're going to work through that as quickly as they can. These will be very large awards, of course, at least some of them will be very large awards. So I think that'll take some number of months, but I think we certainly hope by early summer that we'll be able to do that.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Dan? All right, well, thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank
We'll be
you.
rooting from the sidelines.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. So moving on to our next agenda item, we have a panel. Well, before I talk about the panel, and I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to talk about the panel, but one of the reasons that we're doing a panel like this is because this is one of our field trips, field meetings that we're having. And one thing that Carrie and I have been talking about is to make sure that when we're in the region or a state, that we actually not only institute a field trip. I think George talked about the benefits of going out. The farm group did the same in Fort Collins. But we also thought it would be helpful to get some information about what's actually happening on the ground in the state of Michigan that is relevant to the conversation that this group has already been having for a while. And it's a really good segue from Dan Utek's presentation about the update about the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, because I think we are going to talk, the panel is going to be talking about Green Bank and how things are being done here in Michigan with opportunities and challenges. So I'll turn it over to you, Carrie.
Great. Should we invite our panel up? So we invited Michigan Saves to come talk about their work, and Michigan Saves is the Michigan Green Bank for the state. It's a nonprofit green bank. So Eli, you'll probably talk a little bit about how they're formed. But we thought it was a great opportunity after all the work that the board had done on the GGRF charge, and just hearing from Dan about the update since we were here, to hear about what is that work like, and hear about what it's like in Michigan in particular. So welcome. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. And how are we going to form? Am I going to turn it over to you? And and you'll do introductions of who you've invited. It's very funny that our Ann Arbor person can't be who's on the phone.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's just funny. All right. So to talk, you need the red button on.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eli Lieberman, and I am the Director of Clean Energy Financing with Michigan Saves. I want to thank the Environmental Protection Agency and the Environmental Financial Advisory Board and Carrie and Ed so much for this opportunity to speak with you all today. You know, as Carrie was alluding to, we're very interested in the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and we view it as this generational opportunity for us. So we're really appreciative of the advice that you all have provided the EPA. So it's a privilege to be able to speak with you all today. So Michigan Saves is the nation's first nonprofit green bank. We were founded in 2009 with a grant from our Public Service Commission, the Michigan Public Service Commission, and the United States Department of Energy. I'm going to read our mission statement because I don't want to screw it up. Our mission is to promote accessible, equitable, and just investments in energy efficiency and clean energy to support healthy and thriving communities. That's brand new, just debuted about a couple months ago. To date, we've supported over $500 million in clean energy improvements across Michigan. We work in a couple of different ways. On the residential side, for those that are familiar with Carrie and Inclusive Prosperity Capital and their incredible work with the Smart E-Loan, the Michigan Saves residential product might be pretty familiar to you all. The OG, yes, exactly. We work primarily through a credit enhancement model. So we're very fortunate that the state of Michigan, the legislature, will provide us with annual appropriations that we use as credit enhancement in the form of a loan loss reserve. And we we work with a contract or a network of over 1,000 certified contractors, and right now 5 residential credit unions. And how it works is the contractor network is vetted by Michigan Saves. And we also do quality assurance and quality control in the projects as well. But the contractors are our primary means of originating clean energy projects. So they are out in the community, and Jason will talk about this a little bit more, but they are talking with the homeowners when they're either in an emergency situation where their heat goes out in the middle of the night in the winter, or if they're planning a clean energy upgrade. They will then bring the project to one of our Michigan Saves lenders like Rob from LAFQ. And in exchange for the residential lenders accessing our credit enhancement, the loan loss reserve, there are certain program requirements, and those are underwriting down to certain FICO scores, offering term lengths that are long enough to help the energy savings be greater than the debt service ideally, and then helping to keep the interest rates down as well. So that's been incredibly successful. As I was saying, we've deployed over $500 million through that arrangement, and we like to say that we have a sort of nation-leading leverage ratio of 30-1. So every $1 we get from the state of Michigan, we leverage that 30 times over with private sector investment. On the commercial side, we operate a couple of different programs. We also utilize the loan loss reserve and the credit enhancement, and we've built some really unique partnerships. Recently, we started working with First Independence Bank, which is a CDFI located in the city of Detroit. It is the last minority depository institution left in the state of Michigan, and they were formed during the sort of era of white flight out of the city and the lack of capital that was left. And this bank rose up to ensure that those that remained in Detroit had a robust financial system. So we're really proud to be partners with them. And we've developed a sort of innovative amortization schedule that allows to sort of emulate longer term lengths to help achieve that sort of energy savings greater than debt service that we're all after. We also offer utility interest rate buy-down programs with some of our bigger utilities, including DTE and Consumers Energy, and those have been widely successful to help small businesses become more energy efficient. And ideally, those programs can buy the interest rate down to 0. So that's that's basically, in summary, how we work on residential and commercial. But ultimately, the success of Michigan Saves is really built upon our partners. And we've built this incredible network in Michigan of contractor partners, lender partners, and municipal and state partners. And that's really what allows our work to flourish. So after I finished talking, I forgot to introduce everyone on the top. My apologies, but we have Jason Beal from Right Energy. He's one of our great contractor partners. We have Rob Boomershine from LAFQ. He's the vice president of lending at LAFQ, which is one of our credit union partners. Jason's the owner of Right Energy. My apologies, Jason, for missing that. And then ironically, from the city of Ann Arbor, we have Missy Stoltz virtually. Many of you might be aware that Ann Arbor is sort of one of the country's leading cities when it comes to sustainability, and much of that is due to Missy. So I think it's great that you all be able to hear from her today while you're in the city of Ann Arbor. Before I switch it over to my other panelists, I wanted to just talk about a few local programs or a few innovative programs we've offered recently, and then also just a few points on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund for you all to consider as you continue to advise the EPA on some innovative programs we'd offered recently. One is our Detroit Loan Fund. We're very proud of this. We're committed along with President Biden to the Justice 40 Initiative and the EPA to the Justice 40 Initiative. So we really look to make sure that we're working in low-income and disadvantaged communities. We did an analysis of the approval and denial rates for residential Michigan Saves loans between major cities in Michigan and the counties in which they're located. And we found in Wayne County, which is where the city of Detroit is located, that there were disproportionately high denial rates in the city of Detroit versus the rest of Wayne County compared to the same sort of ratio outside of Wayne County. So what we did is we kind of looked at the reasons for why that might be. One was concern over maybe some historical issues with credit scores in the city. So we devised an alternative underwriting criteria for the Michigan Saves product. We call this ability to pay, and we did this in partnership with True Community Credit Union. And how it works is you automatically apply for a Michigan Saves loan. If that doesn't meet the initial criteria, it's then automatically put into this secondary review. So you don't have to apply to a different program or apply twice. It's automatically enrolled in the DLF if it doesn't pass the traditional Michigan Saves underwriting criteria. That then goes to True Community Credit Union. They conduct their ability to pay review, and then they originate and service those loans. Unlike the traditional Michigan Saves product where we just use the loan loss reserve, on this one, we actually hold the notes on the loans. And this was actually thanks to a partnership with the Kresge Foundation. They gave us a program related investment to allow us to then to issue these loans. I think to date, we've done, the first loan was in June of 2022. We've done 224 loans. We got $2.5 million from the Kresge Foundation, and that money is now fully committed. So we're really excited for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund because we view this as an opportunity to take this program statewide, and we're really eager to do that. The initial data coming out of this is that the denial rate in Detroit has dropped from 51% to 36%. So we're happy to see the results there, and that's more in line with Wayne County. Another great program that we recently offered is with the Township of Sterling Heights. They had some ARPA funds that they were looking to invest into clean energy. They wanted to offer that to their community. So we partnered with Sterling Heights and we created a two-tiered program, one for Sterling Heights residents that are at 250% FPL or less. They received a $7,500 clean energy incentive. The second was the market rate program, so anyone over 250 FPL, and they received 20% of the project cost up to $5,000 as an incentive for their energy efficiency project. They get the city of Sterling Heights set aside $1 million in ARPA funding for this. We had sort of anticipated we would go through this funding over the course of 6 months. And our director of business development, Pat O'Boyle, is over there. He'll tell you it wasn't 6 months, it was 9 days. We fully committed those funds. So none of us basically, well, I was lucky to be outside of this a little bit, but Nishat Colleen, our senior programs manager, Pat O'Boyle, and the rest of the incredible team at Michigan Saves, they basically didn't sleep for 9 days and we allocated all of this money. So it really showed the demand for that product, and we're hoping to increase these partnerships with townships across Michigan. On the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, again, we are just so excited about this opportunity. We really feel like this is a really generational opportunity for us to grow as a green bank, to become more in line with our peers like Connecticut and Montgomery County and the New York State Green Bank. A couple thoughts we have. Dan was sort of alluding to the timeline that is coming up around the distribution of these funds. I think for a lot of organizations, especially like Michigan Saves, our appropriations that we receive are restricted funds on our balance sheet. We can really just use them for our loan loss reserve. So we don't have a lot of runway for staffing up right now to prepare for these funds, prepare for the GGRF. I know that the EPA has talked a lot about that 6-month timeline, that 6-month pipeline at the beginning. And we're concerned that we can't staff up now because we just don't have the assurance of when the funding, if we'll be on one of the awarding applications, when the funding will come. So I would say that when that award amount is made and the lead applicants are identified, if a really clear timeline could be established, so Michigan Saves in March could know with some degree of certainty that if we started staffing up and going through the limited amount of money, program administration money we have on hand, that we'll have some degree of assurance that come September, that program administration dollars will come towards Michigan Saves. I also have spoken with a lot of the nascent green banks around the country, and they are concerned about the ability to access capital at the lowest cost possible. The CCIA will be a great source of initial capitalization dollars, but a lot of green banks have 6-month pipelines that are bigger than $10 million. So we'll need to increase their balance sheets. And I think understanding that the lead applicants will need to have a level of self-sufficiency, absolutely, that some amount of their allocation during that negotiation period be set aside for either forgivable loans or some sort of equity-like investment that can help build the balance sheets of the smaller green banks amongst us, because that's really going to what allow us or allow them and us to access other private capital and really achieve what we're looking for at scale. I think I've talked for too long. So how we were hoping to do this is we'll have our other panelists talk a little bit about the work they do, and then hopefully leave about 10-20 minutes for EFAB to ask us questions. So I'm going to turn it over now to Jason Beal with Right Energy.
Thank you. My name is Jason Beal. I'm the owner of Right Energy Partners. Right Energy Partners is a energy efficiency contractor doing municipal, industrial, commercial, multifamily type projects. So boots on the ground. Right Energy Partners, where we excel is being able to make energy efficiency a good business case. And that's really, to what Eli was speaking on, is why they're able to go through those funds as fast as they're able to go through, is when you line up financing and you line up the energy savings and you do it in such a way that it makes, good business sense, or you'll find that there's going to be tremendous amount of demand. The great thing about what we do is, in most cases, if done right, you're actually reducing the operating expense. You're reducing the household expense. So unlike traditional financing where, it's another debt stack on top of a home or on top of a business, this is actually reducing. So we've had instances where we've done a project, a lighting, HVAC, building envelope. So in the services we provide is lighting, HVAC, building envelope, roofing, solar, and we're adding in EV. In a lot of those cases, we're able to reduce the operating expense by 40 to 50%. So if you're a business owner that's been paying $10,000 a month on your heating and your cooling, and now you're spending $5,000, and the financing to do that project is $3,000, well, you've actually made that project technically or financially free. That's how we structure our project, so that it becomes a very, very attractive way to move forward, because 99.9% of the clients that we come into do not, they have a what's called like a CapEx budget for their businesses or for their buildings, but usually it's used up very quickly. And so if the lights aren't off, we're not looking at necessarily replacing. But if the HVAC is working, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So that kind of mindset lends to a situation where when they do decide to try to fix these things, they're running into the gap of cost. For example, for HVAC right now, from the commercial side, if you're looking at new units, all the new produced units, 5-ton, 10-ton, et cetera, are now under the 2020 energy efficiency standards, which means that now, since COVID, your HVAC cost for commercial has gone up at least 40 to 45%. So now those projects that were pushed down the road have now gotten that much more expensive. So that's why financing, to me, is the crux of being able to now allow these projects to get done. Perfect examples, we did a project with the city of Grand Blanc. They had a grant. It was a limited time for that grant, but it was also a limited time for us to do the project because of the cost of it. And without the grant and also the financing we were able to put together with Michigan Saves, that project doesn't happen. And that was to upgrade 6 of their buildings with building envelope and lighting. So these type of funds are critical. And so for me as a contractor, it's how it's structured, meaning the term. So Eli, I'll tell you, I'm a big advocate because I have a background in finance. I'm a big advocate on how the financing is structured. Michigan Saves is a great tool, and the lenders that they've linked with are great in terms of the ability to be able to deploy capital fast. That's the other thing as well. It's the timing of how the capital comes out, but it's also the term at which that capital comes out. Typically, at least on the commercial side, I'll speak to, it's 5 to 6 year term. That was fine, I would say, before COVID, because again, where costs were. Now with projects, when they cost increases, the term just has to get longer because it, again, still needs to make good business sense. So I've been working with Eli on how to craft a product or how to craft a type of loan that now, instead of it being 5-year, is 10 or 15-year. Because the longer you make it, the more ability it is to pay. And that allows for less default, which then turns around and has more success for the program. So again, we're seeing this across the board in multifamily, you know, throughout all the different arenas. So that basically is in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Jason. We'll turn it over to Rob now with LAFCU.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here this morning. Wanted to come and talk to you a little bit about what LAFCU does in combination with the Michigan Saves program. So we've been with Michigan Saves since about the beginning. In late 2010, we joined with them, and we've had the ability to help our membership across the state of Michigan adopt some energy efficient upgrades to their homes, which is quite incredible to do. It's quite rewarding. But over the last 13 years or so, we've lent out about $17 million, somewhere around 1,500 loans, 1,500 members that we've been able to help. One of the things that's really picked up in the last three years or so in my time at LAFCU is the Michigan Saves program. So looking back about four or 5 years ago or so, we would do about $50,000 a month or so in loans, in Michigan Saves loans. And now we're up to over $1 million every single month that we're doing. So that just really shows the demand that the contractors are working hard to, serve the needs of the community, as well as the community's interest in adopting some of these energy efficient products in their homes. And so it's really been a great program for us. It allows us to gain new membership, which is great. We love serving the state of Michigan, and you can only do so much with a billboard, right? But when we are actually able to help people save money and help, increase the efficiency of their home, it makes a big difference. I myself took out a Michigan Saves loan to get new windows in my house and make it more energy efficient. And that's been an incredible option. Again, going back to what Jason said with the term of the loan, it makes that quite affordable to be able to stretch that loan at a low interest rate over a longer term, 10 years or so, I believe is what I took out. Otherwise, that would not be feasible without tapping into the equity of the home or anything like that. So great program, awesome opportunity to help our communities, and we appreciate the partnership.
Thanks, Rob. And we'll go to Missy online with the city of Ann Arbor.
Thanks, Eli. And hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up. Yes, awesome. All right. I'm sorry that I cannot be there in person. Welcome to Ann Arbor. We are so glad that you are here. Ironically, you came as the urban sustainability directors are meeting across the country to get inspired to do transformational climate work. So alas, I can't be with you in person, but I am with you in spirit always, with the intent of what we try to do. So once again, welcome to Ann Arbor. And next time you're back, I promise to be there and give you some of our delicious beer and some of our really fun sustainability tours we've got going on. So before I jump in, I actually wanted to pause for a second. And I think this is more kind of my reflection as a human broadly. I wanted to thank you for your service. Our society is really built on service across the board, whether that's volunteering to be your child's basketball coach or serving on your local YMCA or serving on a national board like you do. We often don't thank people enough for the things that they do to make our society function. And I just wanted to say thank you, especially because the service that you do is so far from the skill sets that I possess, but so instrumental to the success that I hope to have in Ann Arbor. So just thank you for your service. So everyone's really talked about the role Michigan Saves has played, and I just want to say +1. And I'm going to take you on a slightly different perspective kind of journey about the importance of your work and how it intersects with the practical realities of trying to decarbonize. So you may know that Ann Arbor has a goal, a plan, a framework, lots of actions, and we call them all A20. So we have a single brand and a single name for the work that we do. And all of it is guided by the goal of achieving a just and equitable transition to community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. And 2030 is intentional, and it is aggressive, and it is audacious. And we say we walk the line of possibility every single day with how to do that. And some days I see the path, and some days I don't. And all of that is true and real. And I wanted to just share a few of the things that we're doing to try to make that goal manifest and how that sort of intersects with your work. Now, my doctorate is in resilience, right? I'm a social scientist. I'm not really great at finance. Jeev can validate this because he's in the room, but I am bullish. And I think that's what this moment needs. And locally, I am known as a disruptor, and I wear that with pride because we have to disrupt the extractive systems that exist in our society. We have to change what's happening, because if we do not, we know exactly where we're headed. We're headed for growing economic and social disparity. We're heading for rampant climate change. We're heading for an inability of most people to be able to afford what we call the American dream. And I'm not okay with that, and I doubt you are too. So we must be transformative and bullish and bold. And we have privilege in this moment to be in this conversation. And I ask that we use it and don't be afraid to challenge systems. So with that, just a few things I wanted to tell you we've got going on in Ann Arbor are everything from, we're trying to create the nation's first low income carbon neutral neighborhood, existing neighborhood. We've been working for 3 years with the residents of that neighborhood, and it is complicated because the market does not serve low income residents. Many people are too poor for weatherization, meaning that the services that they would get from weatherization would actually do nothing because their hole is in the roof and it's leaking through. Or they're working poor, meaning that they can't actually get the financing that's necessary because they wouldn't be viewed as credit worthy. So we've had conversations with Michigan Saves and others, and we're having to stack every possible solution you can imagine to help finance the kinds of improvements that homeowners need to be able to keep their home, or renters need to be able to stay in place. And yet, how do you do that without gentrifying a neighborhood? And if anyone tells you they know how, I promise you they're lying to you, because absolutely no one knows how to do this without leading to gentrification. And so we talk about that with the residents, and we work on things like getting legal support to generate wills so we can have intergenerational wealth if they choose to sell their home, or thinking about the kinds of investments that we want to make that really secure the cultural and the social and the emotional assets and connectivity that exists in that particular neighborhood. And I'm sorry for the background noise. We've been successful in getting some funding to help through the state. We have some federal grants. We're doing resilience work. We're doing food work. We're doing home decarbonization work. And this neighborhood has also helped us create a home decarbonization assessment. And by help create, I really do truly mean that. The residents sat down with us and they told us what they loved about their homes. And they told us what their pain points in their homes. Same thing for the neighborhood. And they helped us certainly work on a kind of a traditional energy assessment. But we added so many additional variables. We assess renewable energy potential. We assess stormwater and flooding potential. We assess radon. We assess indoor air quality as part of these assessments. We've completed about a third of the neighborhood has gotten these assessments, and we've used that information to seek funding. And we've secured funding to help approximately 40 homes go pretty far in decarbonization. We have a long way to go, but this is figuring out how to correct all the market failures that exist, how to stack this funding, how to work collaboratively with frontline communities who know best what they need in their own neighborhood. This is the project that keeps me going when a homeowner tells me that they're able to stay in their home because we've lowered their bills to a point that they don't have to worry anymore about whether they're going to pay for their energy or they're going to pay for their food. So that's one program we've got going on. We also are creating a whole home energy advisor service where residents can call. It's kind of like a bat phone where they can call and get help to figure out what to do in their home. But they're not just getting kind of one-off information about energy efficiency, because as much as we would all like for people to do energy efficiency, let's name it, it is peas and carrots, right? You got to hide that stuff for most people at this point in society. And so we hide it with solar because our residents really love solar, or battery storage. And we're helping people find their own pathway into the decarbonization movement. And it is a contagion that is taking off. We have the highest solar adoption rate in the state. We have the highest battery adoption rate, also because our electric grid is failing. And while we're making a lot of investments in the electric grid, our distribution network is abysmal. And we're fighting really hard to correct the failures that have led to that system. So we're doing this kind of bat phone service to help people get customized support. We also became the 6th or the 8th community in America, depending on how you count it, to vote to tax ourselves in November of last year to fund climate work. We have a 20-year millage, also a tax just in Michigan, generate roughly $7 million a year. It's property tax, and it's 20 years to fund climate work. And I am so proud of our community for stepping up to fund that work. A significant portion of that funding goes directly back to rebates. They'll be started. We just put RFPs out. We have 2 firms we're interviewing to administer those rebates to help people get even more funding support to help them implement the solutions we need. They'll stack with the IRA rebates. We're a little ahead of the IRA and the state and getting those rebates out. So we'll go first. We'll make all of the mistakes, and we're coordinating with the state closely so we can teach them all the things not to do, which is often more important than what to do. And hopefully we'll be able to do really, really deep work. We'll also stratify based on income, so low income households get more support than those with a greater ability to pay. We run bulk discount programs. We do financing with Michigan Saves. We've launched a contractor training program so that when someone comes to your door, you don't get talked out of a heat pump. Because you know what? I'm really tired of contractors talking people out of heat pumps, especially when they work for certain clients. And so we realized some of that was education and lack of familiarity, and some of that's just lazy. And we have a lot of work to do to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. And so the city's going to work with contractors who want to play ball, who really care about this decarbonization. And you know what? We're also going to work with our unions, which is why we have a partnership with IBEW 252 and UA 190 called The Future is Electric. And we're hiring and recruiting people, especially underrepresented populations, into the industries to make sure we've got the workers and we've got good family sustaining jobs that are available to people, because we need those workers. And I'm trying to think, there's so much other stuff going on. I think I'll end with just sharing maybe that we have a shared commitment, I think, to Justice 40. And I would just caution, as you give advice, that poverty hides in plain sight. And so looking at simply at a census tract is just too high of a level to recognize that people live in different places. And the story I wanted to share with you is of my neighbor, that we run a program in Ann Arbor called Aging in Place Efficiently that helps low-income seniors stay in a home of their choosing for longer, which we know leads to better health outcomes. And the way we do that in partnership with Michigan Saves is that we offer energy efficiency improvements and we offer aging improvements, things like hydraulics or guardrails, help paving steps, flattening bumps. And this has helped roughly 20 seniors stay in their home. And one day when I was out walking my dog, I looked across the street to my neighbor Frank, and there was a sign in his yard that he was a participant in this program. And to be a participant, you have to be extremely low income. I mean, borderline not able to afford living in Ann Arbor. And this entire time, I had no idea. And talking to the staff who run this program, I realized that Frank had fallen multiple times in the backyard for hours on end. No one knew. No one knew. None of his neighbors knew. We had no idea what Frank was dealing with. We had no idea that Frank couldn't pay his bills. We had no idea what his bills even looked like, because that's not what we would know. But I don't want to live in a community where I leave my neighbors behind. And I don't think you do either. And so we've got to find ways of helping everyone get lifted. Otherwise, we're leaving a whole lot more people behind. And that I don't think is our intention. So that's my rambling and my pontification. It is so nice to see you all. Oh, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Missy. So I think we'd like to just have the remainder of the time be available for the board to just ask us all any questions that you have.
Sanjeev.
I just wanted to I had to make a quick comment here. So just for the record, Sanjeev Sinha with Corvius. First of all, we over the last 24 hours and prior to that by emails and etc., as folks like myself and Craig was kind enough to visit us yesterday, welcome you here. I think the comments that, the talk that Eli, Jason, Rob, and Missy just gave you gives you a flavor of what Michigan is all about, and especially the city of Ann Arbor and our leadership. There is a reason why we are ahead of the curve on many big scale initiative, bold steps that we are taking. It is because of people like Eli and Missy, who you just saw in action. So welcome to the area, guys. I had a very simple question for you, Eli. First of all, I have tremendous regards for the work that Michigan Saves has done, and you very clearly gave data points on that. $500 million worth of work. Last year, actually, inspired primarily by Missy, we ended up getting solar panels through the City of Ann Arbor program and the contractors they had. And they interacted with us to try to actually see if we could end up getting a loan from Michigan Saves. I ended up just writing a check, but so didn't actually connect with you guys, but they did a very nice job, home solar guys in Ann Arbor, for what it's worth. The question that I had for you is $500 million worth of finance over the last many years. Can I ask you, what percent, do you track the demographics on that? How much of that was sort of low income residents versus, is it possible for you to do that or no? Thank you.
We do have some methods of tracking that. We do it, unfortunately, to Missy's chagrin, on the census level. And it's right now we say that 59% of our financing goes into low and middle income communities. And that is the closest that we're able to get. I think if we were able to look into the lending data a little bit more, but for privacy reasons, we keep it at the census level, and at 59% is the number we use.
Can you talk about your default rate, Eli? Just phenomenally low.
Yeah, actually, how about we have Rob talk about that? I think he was actually just reviewing the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory study that looked at this. Rob, can you talk about the performance of these loans?
I sure can. Yeah, thank you. So I know our numbers a little bit better than I recall what was on the Berkeley research paper there, but our numbers are lower than what showed on Berkeley. So we show 0.25% delinquency rate on this portfolio as a whole. So very, very low.
And it is unsecured consumer lending.
That is absolutely right. Yep. Yep. So for an unsecured loan, that's unheard of. That is absolutely unheard of. But I think that speaks to the value that these programs bring, that the enhancements to the home bring, and the affordability. Going back again to what Jason was saying, the affordability to be able to pay this loan back makes a big difference for sure.
Jeff, and then Lori.
Thank you, Jeff Deal, Future Scope Advisors, for the record. Thank you all for this great presentation. I mean, it's partnerships like this that really make this market work, and are really the fundamental the foundation for what the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is hopefully going to be taking to the next level. My former role was at CEO of Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, which was Rhode Island's green bank, and we did not have a residential program, but we did have a commercial pace, and soon we'll be setting up a direct lending and commercial, but also municipal. We lent for energy efficiency and renewables in the municipal space out to 15 years, and our PACE program provided 20 to 25 years funding. And Jason, you made a great point of, some of these projects, even with 5 to 10 year financing, don't pencil out, because again, I think there is both the environmental aspect of this, a greenhouse gas reduction, but for many businesses, small, medium, and even large businesses and residents, it's the economics. And these are can be cash flow positive transactions, and clearly contributes to the very positive loan loss experience, I think, in this, because you really are helping. And Missy said the same thing about helping people create more disposable income, whether it's at the business level. But there still are projects out there that are not quite making it economically with that 5 to 10 year lending. Rob and Eli, what's happening in Michigan with regards to trying to extend those maturities even longer to make these transactions even more economically feasible, and especially at the margin?
I think one of the things that we take into account is the amount being borrowed as well, right? So if we're looking at a $10,000 HVAC loan, that doesn't necessarily need to go beyond the 10-year repayment period in order to be affordable. However, there are times when solar panels or bigger jobs can be much more expensive. I recall a loan that we did for windows on a real big house that totaled just over $75,000 just for windows, right? And so that was hugely beneficial to be able to move that repayment term out to 15 years for that family, as opposed to be limited to a shorter term on a home equity loan, or certainly an unsecured loan or anything like that.
Yeah, I think again, with lighting has always had a quick payback. HVAC not quite as fast. It depends on, but also building envelope is necessary and very advantageous, but that sometimes brings that economics down. And I think that's a lot of the challenges that certainly we had in Rhode Island. And how again do you have more deeper, complete retrofits that economically make sense?
Can I jump in? Oh, sorry, Eli. Is it okay?
Go ahead, Missy.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is, you will have a more specific answer. I just wanted to offer a program that we've tested in Ann Arbor that's proven wildly successful is Scale. So for solar, what we do is it's called Solarize, where we aggregate neighbors, and it's a neighbor saying, I want to get solar, and they invite others together. And then we work with the solar installers where they're basically passing marketing savings on to the installers. And so the way the program works is if we get 5 people to move forward with solar, actually, if we get 3 people to move forward with solar, they all get 5% off. If we get 5 people to move forward, they all get 10% off. And if we get 10 or more to move forward, they all get 10% off. And we have a staff person that's dedicated to make sure permits are pulled, process is seamless, consultants, contractors are responding to folks. And we've put almost 5 megawatts in the ground or on the roofs in the last 3 years through that program, saving over $1.8 million in upfront costs of solar because of sheer volume. And our contractors are hiring because there's just so much demand in the system. So I'm just offering, I don't think that answers your question fully, but I think the point of it is to stack multiple different things. How do you do volume? How do you do geographical focus? How do you bring in financing? I don't think it's one solution, at least for us. We're finding it's lots of things kind of working together.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, one of the things we did in Rhode Island as well is that they put together a new commercial loan and grant program, because one of the obstacles in commercial is, you touch the electric system and all of a sudden you got to bring everything up to code. And rooftop solar is great, especially if you can repair your roof, but if it costs you $150,000 to upgrade your electric system, the economics are out the door. And so that was one thing that we had developed, was a grant program where we had funding to provide the grant to meet all those necessary ancillary costs away from getting the project done. And so that was one of the things that we were fortunate to be able to do.
Yeah, so Jeff, I think for us right now, as Jason was alluding to, we see this gap in the market where we have PACE in Michigan, but what we're finding, and I think Jason can talk to this a little bit more, is that there are gaps in the PACE market where if you're sort of below a certain dollar threshold, either just it's administratively too burdensome or the costs are too high. And we're finding that, to be like $1 million or less. And there really isn't a product that helps fill that, like, we need 15-year plus terms for these commercial energy efficiency projects. So I think we really look to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund as the way to meet this need. So we plan with GGRF funds for Michigan Saves to begin offering a sort of sub-PACE long-term energy efficiency loan for commercial purposes. That this is like the exact use case we see for the GGRF.
Yeah, we were doing the same in Rhode Island, and like I said, we'd gotten $5 million from the state to do a commercial or small business lending program, which we were looking really kind of doing mini PACE, because we had the same thing. It was all private sector capital that we were mobilizing, but it was $1 million minimums, $2 million minimums. In fact, we actually brought NYCEC into Rhode Island because they'll do smaller transactions. So we've got a New York City PACE financing provider doing business in Rhode Island. It's great.
That sub-$1 million market, or 2 million, it depends, is an issue all across the country. We see.
To speak to that, and to especially tie in with communities that are underrepresented, that is a direct, you're not going to get $1 million plus projects. So a perfect example is we did the state's first PACE Express for a house of worship in the city of Wayne County. And it was a facility, it's a limestone church, beautiful building that needs probably about $2.5 million worth of work. They qualified because of the structure of how PACE is and the property values and so forth for only $250,000. So we as a contractor had to maximize what we could do. Instead of a new roof, we did coping on doing metal coping on the outside of the roofing. Instead of a boiler system, looked at an alternate, heating source, lighting and building envelope and so forth. So we had to kind of take that $2.5 million project and shrink it in, and they still have a lot of needs still. So the reason why I guess I'm saying that is because, again, yes, PACE provides that longer term financing, but again, with the minimum now being basically $1 million and they're not being lenders, because the challenge is that there were lenders for a little while that would do $250,000 or $125,000 loans. Their cost to do the legal, all the financing that it takes, to them it's economical, where the dollars don't make sense until it crosses $1 million. So to have a source where it's $1 million and under, the 150,000, you'll be able to attract a lot more projects that can get done. Because right now, like I said, as a contractor, if I don't have that ability to tap into financing, it's just most of these projects aren't going to get done. And to me, you know, hearing those, again, having a background in financing, having those default rates, again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but it seems as though the second, like you could merge with the private sector, because the secondary market for buying out, packaging these loans, and then somebody buying them, there's such a low default rate. I would imagine that a market could be created for energy efficiency financing that almost would be like buying a 30-year treasury note. Now you talk about that longer term. Now, okay, if you're a homeowner and now it's your mortgage is 30 years, we have a market for mortgage-backed security. If you now have a market for basically energy funding that is similar to that, I would imagine you have a lower default rate than on the mortgages than mortgage-backed securities. You now have a market that says, okay, we'll take these package of loans and we'll take that longer term. And now you solved your issue of term. Because if I can tell you right now, every single loan I did or project I did had a 30-year term to it, that becomes a no-brainer. Whether it's residential or everything, every home you almost have to look at is like a mini business. It's still got to make business sense for your home to do an energy project. It still comes out to dollars and cents. You know, we all want to reduce carbon emission. We all want to reduce greenhouse gases, absolutely. But to your point, if it's economically not feasible, it will not get done. So to being able to elongate out the term, and again, there's already an infrastructure somewhat to do it. I think it's just connecting the dots and the pieces. Then you'd be able to really, I think, utilize these funds and, to Eli's point, leverage them 10 to 1, 20 to 1 with private capital, because now there's an attractive, you know, a bond, like say, that could be bought. That's a package of, you know, hundreds of energy efficiency loans, both residential side and commercial.
Yeah, one point you made about the small business that couldn't quite make the larger project work. They make the smaller project work. They create positive cash flow. They reinvest that in their business, create more jobs, create better economics. Then they can start to afford that next part, or maybe move to a building that's a little bit more suitable. But again, there's the considerable knockoff effect on the economic benefit to that smaller business doing that work, even though it's more restricted. Absolutely. But it also increases property values, because now when you have properties that cost lower to operate, it increases the value of those properties. So it has an exponential effect.
Lori and then Gwen.
I have two questions, but first I just want to congratulate you on what a great job you've done with Michigan Saves. And Missy, thank you for your thank you, and also for all your passion and creativity. I was talking to Eli earlier. I was involved with some of these Saves programs back in 2010, Charleston Saves, Alabama Saves, St. Louis Saves, and they did not, they didn't make it. So I don't think those programs are still around. So I just really congratulate you that you've had such a sustainable program. And you've also had a supportive legislature with the PACE financing. I live in North Carolina. We still can't get our PACE legislation approved. So I guess it's all of those things together. But the two questions I have, one is, just trying to boil it down, how have you been successful when other states have not been able to pull this off, particularly around residential? You referenced the Lawrence Berkeley study back from like 2010. They came out with all the barriers to getting residential uptake, that even if people can get 0% financing, they just don't want to do it. They have other things going on in their lives. They've got kids, and they're just not going to focus on getting their house more energy efficient. Or if they are going to take out a loan for $2,000, they want to have marble countertops in their kitchen. It's just not a priority for people. And somehow you've been able to overcome that. So that's one question. Just what do you think how would you boil down your magic sauce? And second, what can you do to help other states adopt more of what's working for you? Because, even Renew Financial, that I'm sure you're familiar with, they only do business in 2 states. So one of the leading PACE financiers, they can't really seem to get past California and Florida. So what are you doing, and how can you help other states?
Yeah, I would love, great question. I'd love to speak to this. And I think Jason and Rob can actually chime in on this as well. I think Well, shout out to the Michigan Saves team. I'm pretty new, so I can't really take much credit for for our track record. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Mary Templeton, our CEO that just retired. She's really who's responsible for this incredible organization. But I think we've been talking a lot about the business case today, and I think a lot of Michigan Save's success is that we're sort of lender. We're contractor driven. So we try to make sure that everything we do fits within the business processes of contractors to make the process as streamlined as possible, because a lot of energy efficiency work is not planned. It is, that your furnace breaks in Michigan in January and there's an emergency situation, and it's the contractors that will show up there and can present the different, what they can be installed and the different financing options that are available. So it's sort of leveraging that contractor network. We also do have programmatic requirements. There are efficiency requirements for the measures that are installed. So for it to be a Michigan Saves loan, it does have to meet certain energy efficiency levels. And then Carrie and IPC and Michigan Saves work together to develop this software called NGen. And I think that's really one of the cruxes, and something that I think Rob and Jason would speak to when we look to do this work nationally through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It's that making this as easy as possible, as streamlined as possible, and as especially for secondary transactions, replicable. NGen allows contractors and lenders to seamlessly chat with each other and keep each other appraised about the loan and where it is in its process, where the project is in its process. And it also generates the energy savings measures, so it can help for compliance purposes. So I think the fact that we're able to streamline everything, so it works for Rob's business process at LAFCU, it works for Jason's business process at Wright, and then it will work, for compliance purposes for the EPA to help with those savings generations. I think that's really what's led to our success. I don't know if Rob or Jason or Carrie want to speak to that.
Yeah. So as a contractor, I'm just going to be frank. A lot of my brethren are not technologically proficient. So the more simple you can make a system, the better it is. And Michigan Saves has done an awesome job with the NGen software to make it where, so there's already enough hurdles in the project itself. Adding more hurdles just makes it where as a contractor will say, okay, well, I'm just going to do it another way. I'm not going to use Michigan Saves dollars. They've made it where it's so seamless that it's a no-brainer to do.
Would you ever consider licensing your engine software to other states?
That is what we do together.
Okay.
Yeah, we started that years ago.
I think so,
2000. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Before you came
Yeah,
in
yeah.
2018. I think one of the things that is represented here on this panel and with Missy that speaks to the success is Michigan Saves operates in an ecosystem that they have deeply studied and been embedded in, and understand what are the needs of Ann Arbor and city and their goals, what are the needs of a lender, what's the business model of a credit union, and how to be aligned. What's the business model of a contractor? There are many, many business models of contractors. And so I think it's lining up all these things and figuring out how to reduce barriers and streamline while having that kind of policy goal of decarbonization, energy efficiency. So that's like Michigan Saves goal, but everybody else has other things that they're focused on. And so finding that alignment and the solutions, I think that's the opportunity all across the country. And I think Michigan's like the OG, like really the way in which Michigan has gone about green banking is really tremendous. Did you have a second question, Lori? Oh, did we get through your question? Yeah, okay. Gwen and then Ashley. Oh, did Missy, did you want to respond? No.
Oh, I just very, 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 very quickly wanted to offer that I think Michigan Saves is doing a fabulous job, and we all have opportunities for growth. So I would just offer right now direct pay provisions that nonprofits and local governments have access to. We did reach out to Michigan Saves and we said, we need a zero interest loan to cover that 30% until the funding comes in. And the conversation was, we can't do that. We'll go to our lenders and see what's possible. And that didn't work. So we went to the state And I want to offer this. More and more money and resources are coming, but we haven't thought about how we're going to get those dollars. So the city of Ann Arbor is doing an $11 million solar project. I only have 7 million, but I can use that direct pay provision, right? Because I will get the rebate that brings me into money. And the state is giving us a 0 interest loan to move that forward, not Michigan Saves. So I just want to offer that times they are a changing, and we have to be inherently flexible with new tools and new resources. And that may not be the business model we normally operate in, but I promise you, Ann Arbor is not going to default on a loan. And so, thinking about the risk factor and making sure we're flexible with the types of products to move the markets we want to move.
Thanks, Missy. Gwen, and then Ashley.
Thank you, Gwen Yamamura, Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. Eli and team, thank you. Excellent presentation. And really, everyone looks up to Michigan Saves. You guys are, the role model for all of us. Couple of questions too. I'm curious from the lending perspective with the bill savings target, how the underwriting might change with your lenders. And the second question I had is, it might not be applicable. You might already, from a contractor's perspective, be doing federal Davis-Bacon and maybe Buy American guidelines. But if not, what might be some challenges that contractors might face? Thanks.
Could you repeat in terms of the challenges from a contractor side? I'm sorry, I didn't fully grasp all the.
Right. So for these funding, I think the guidance is still forthcoming,
Mhm.
but in anticipation that Davis-Bacon, your prevailing wages might be applicable, or Buy American requirements. I'm just curious from a contractor's perspective, if that might be a heavy lift or if it's pretty seamless.
I don't know if I would say it's a heavy lift. So like from a standpoint of and actually Missy had brought it up in terms of bulk, right? So they have a program where a certain amount of homeowners, go forward, there's a savings. That's actually part of our business model. So part of the reason why we've done over 400 projects since we've started the company. We're actually top trade ally with DTA and consumers. And part of that has happened because we've built our whole business around financing and around, the utility rebates and so forth. So I speak to that in the sense of saying that there are incentives there for, Buy Michigan or Buy American, and those definitely help. So when we work with our manufacturers that manufacture product, we're always looking at buying in bulk. That helps keep costs low that we then turn around and pass over to the customer. COVID kind of threw a rift in that entire ability for a lot of things. Again, where I speak to just cost increase since COVID, it has been a tremendous across the board. LED lighting typically has declined in cost year after year. Since COVID, it's actually up about 15 to 20%. So although it's lower, it's then started to rise. And that has numerous factors behind why that is. Everything from where most product is made and then transport over. But as a contractor, supply of product is actually being my biggest concern right now. So to that point, we've got 2 or 3 projects where we've quoted, but the actual material won't come for, in one of them, 24 months. So by the time the product actually arrives, I'm now re-quoting because of labor challenges. So that makes it very difficult for projects that are, first, the hurdle to get it, yes, we'll do it. Now it's going to, 2 years from now, I might have a situation where it's like, well, now it's no longer cost effective because the cost rose. Labor is another challenge as well. So workforce development, having enough labor, and it spills over the whole entire market, everything from manufacturers making the product to those of us contractors that are implementing it. Being able to have that labor, it does affect, and those are hurdles, yes.
So we're right at time, but Ashley, we'll give you the last question.
Sorry, thanks, Carrie. Ashley Allen, IT Capital. I can also table if I don't want to keep people from the break.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Really appreciate this conversation, and it's fascinating how closely what you all have constructed in Michigan actually aligns with our work groups thinking on all of the pieces of the puzzle. I don't know whether you saw the EFAB report that we put together with angst and power late last year, but it strikes me in this conversation that what you've really done well, and I think this is what Carrie is saying, what you've really done well in Michigan in this ecosystem that you've created is solve for the on-ramp that has to happen before the green bank can even come in and make a loan. And in my mind, that's the pre-development, the pre-development, the pre-development. And it's what sort of falls into this pool of technical assistance. But from my perspective, as everyone on this board has heard, I think, and I come from a private finance background, we need some translation of the technical assistance language from in the pre-development through to the loan. I mean, I just think of that as equity. It's like where the equity goes if you have a big profit and you're a software company. But in this sector, it doesn't get translated that way. So I feel like there's a breakdown in language. And I think it would be really interesting to have your team, you're probably already doing this, but translate what you've done into language that is really digestible for the other end of the spectrum, right? Not just the low income and people that have to solve all these really, really gritty problems, but for the philanthropists that might fill those gaps with philanthropy. And again, I know you're working on that, Carrie. I'm sure you've been working on it for a decade, but I just seeing how you all have demonstrated this in Michigan and being able to hear you talk about it, I actually think it could use some revs of clarity to capture what Missy's saying, to capture what you're saying, Eli, to capture what all of you have said today and be like, this is where we need the money. So that's more of a recommendation or comment than a question, but I'm excited to see where that might go under this new greenhouse gas arena.
Absolutely. And I mean, we would love to work with the EPA and EFAB as much as possible, to help share the decades of learned experience we have. And I think you're right about those technical assistance dollars. And I think that speaks to the point that we'll need to build the balance sheets of these smaller green banks because they're just not going to be able to, from day one, borrow money and then re-lend it. It will take some time for them to get established to build these relationships. So we need to make sure that we're capitalizing nascent green banks across the country, building their balance sheets, allowing them to access program admin, technical assistance dollars, build these networks, and then they'll be in a better position, to borrow money from prime applicants and then re-lend it.
Absolutely. And I know some of the green banks have done a good job. A few of them have done a really good job building their balance sheets, but even that, a roadshow on building the balance sheets of green banks and going out to the more traditional people, it's got to be really crisp and easy, as you know. But yeah, thank you all for this great presentation. Thanks, Carrie.
So I want to thank Ed Chu. It was Ed's idea to bring in Michigan Saves and have this conversation as a great follow-on from the work of the charge that we did. And and his colleagues, thank you so much for coming, Eli, and talking about the great work and that bringing the lender and contractor perspective in and the city perspective in. That's what it really looks like on the ground, right? So it's been really wonderful to have you all. Thank you. And thank you, Ed. What a great idea.
Well, it was a special treat because Eli and I got to reconnect again, and we apparently met a long time. I feel really old every time I talk about this.
I went to graduate school at the University of Washington, go Huskies, and Ed spoke to our class.
So that's what he reminded me.
Class.
So
Yeah.
that's the age thing.
So
that
when he called me and left me a voicemail, I was like, oh my God, Ed Chu,
This is
Famous.
Anyway, enough
so
of that. So with that, I really appreciate Eli. You actually, I know you made a long trek to come out to do this, and thank you guys. It was really important information to share with the group. So thank you. And how about Anne? And Missy, thank you. And next time I do come back because I'm an alum here, so I do come back from time to time, and I'll look you up next time I'm back.
You
in
bet.
town.
Go
Right.
blue. That's right.
Go blue. Yeah, and we will take a break at this point. Thank you. We're gonna get back together, everyone. We should stay in touch. Yes, yeah.
In Seattle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll be there probably, not next week, the week after.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll ping you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So, lots of energy around the room, I can tell, because we're 6 minutes into our next session and we're still up there talking. So, it was a great session. Yeah, so let's get started again because we have some business to take care of. Actually, more business this time. Okay. So, Carrie, I think I'm gonna turn this session over to you.
Yep. We are now going to talk about our two proposed charges, the water affordability charge and the water reuse charge. And we're going to start with the water affordability charge. And Cynthia, one of the co-leaders on the charge, is going to take us through the charge and discussion. And our ideal outcome is that we're voting to approve the charge and allow the work group to move forward.
Exactly. Thank you, Carrie. Cynthia Kohler, Water Now Alliance, for the record. So I'm very excited. It's been a journey to get here with this water affordability charge. I think the better part of a year, actually. So I want to start briefly by thanking my co-chair, Janet Clements with One Water Econ. I think Janet's online with us today. Tara, I just want to make sure Janet's available. Great. And then also the affordability work group. It was a large group and very active and very engaged. And what you see before you is the result of a lot of time, a lot of commitment, and a lot of engagement. I really want to commend EPA with the EPA team. So where we started, just to remind you all, almost a year ago now, we had almost 12 water charges. There was a lot. There was a number from EPA itself. There were a number from EFAB itself. And so what you see here is really a lot of effort to consolidate those, to bring it down to what you see is 5 elements that are all highly integrated. The reason we didn't narrow it further is because to really address the fundamental affordability issues, these seem to be the issues that were most integrated and most synergistic. So with that, I'll just run through this. This really arose because water's been cheap for a long time, and that is changing. Rates are going up. Affordability is becoming an issue nationwide, and so an appropriate issue for EPA's focus and this committee's. There are the particular issue that spurred this is that there are a lot of limitations that appear to limit the ability of utilities, primarily municipal public utilities, to provide customer assistance programming for one reason or another. What we have found is that, at least anecdotally, is that many of those legal barriers are perceived barriers. There are some that are legal barriers for sure, but in many cases they're perceived, and there are avenues to address those issues. So part of what you see here is a high-level approach to addressing both perceived and actual challenges around affordability, and to provide some guidance and recommendations to EPA for how it can better serve the utilities in the states that are involved in clean water and drinking water to address these concerns. So I'll just pause and see if EPA wants to jump in here yet.
I'll start and then maybe pass it to Michael. But just to say thank you for taking on this charge. Cynthia, as you mentioned, there was a lot, and just we're really happy and excited about where this has landed. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really great opportunity. One of the things that's really, really important to us here at EPA, and we've got a big effort behind it, is really looking at water affordability for the utilities, for the customers, because we do know through all of the TA work and all these discussions we had, and hearing the folks talking this morning from Michigan Saves about some of the impacts for utilities, this is something we know we need to address. We need to have a lot of effort behind it, and we are really excited to do that. So all the great information you all put together through this charge and the subsequent work product, we're really just happy to be here and support you all any way that we can.
Great.
Thank you. I'll just bring a little perspective from Clean Water SRF, in particular, our SRFs more generally on the affordability. Obviously, particularly with the bipartisan infrastructure law, we have a significant amount of additional subsidization, which is the free money from the SRF program, either principal forgiveness loans or grants in some cases. Certainly, I think those funds are intended for and can't target, the affordability issue for particular customers and households. One of the challenges we face is identifying those communities and particularly better targeting the subsidy that provides. So you're subsidizing those households, those customers who really need a subsidy, and not many of us sitting on the room who are neighbors of theirs who don't need that, right? So the Clean Water SR program has a very unique eligibility for additional subsidization. It's not available in the drinking water program that we've been trying for several years, I think unsuccessfully, to identify how best to use it. And I think it was presented to you a year ago and it fed into this charge. And I think it's number 4 on the objectives there. It's how do we, and that eligibility is, ADSIP can go to disadvantaged communities as defined by the state, and we have all criteria that they work on, but there's also the eligibility to go to a non-disadvantaged community if the subsidy is directed to households that would not be able or have difficulty affording the cost of improvements being made with that assistance, right? So it's kind of this unique, how do you target it to those households? It has to be through a user charge system or other appropriate structure. So it's kind of vague. And we run into the problem, that's bigger part of this, which is rate structures and utilities. So many utilities say we can't charge disparate rates.
Right.
So we can't do it through our rate structure. First of all, respectfully, I don't always accept that, is that maybe utilities need to look at or work with their state legislatures to start addressing that issue in this time of rising costs. Just kind of finding water is relatively cheap, but now that we are pricing it correctly and what's needed for the investments to be made, as we look at these flexibilities, I think utilities and state legislatures and others need to look at, be innovative and look at flexibility as well. That said, I think there's ways to try to do this. We've approached the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, the Wastewater Utility Association as well, and they're interested in trying to identify some communities, larger utilities in larger cities that have pockets of affordability issues, and how can you target that subsidy to those users so you don't, the free money doesn't lower the cost of every user, but those users. So that's part of the charge here that we're looking at your innovation and ideas. I mean, it could be, we've talked about, can you fund a customer assistance program directly with that? A variation I've brought up is there a way for a utility to take a loan that kind of goes into a fund? Maybe it is a customer assistance fund, and you still charge every household the same rate, but not everyone pays the full amount, and you draw from that SRF money to pay for 20% of the bill or whatever that is. There's our way of doing that. We need to work with our SRF partners as well in that, because as I think most of you know, this is a reimbursement program. You draw cash based on construction or whatnot. So if you're to fund that fund, how do you draw from the SRF? So lots of things to look at. And I'll leave you with one final twist. Is a large Midwest utility that's more of a wholesaler. They've been talking to, and they have, they serve about 30 communities, about 12 of which I think would be disadvantaged under the state's criteria. Can that utility, take the loan, provide? It's mainly on collection systems, obviously, failing collection systems, failing sewer laterals. Can they take the loan, do the construction, and pass that subsidy on to that community? The difficulty again is they say, we're happy to do that. Those funds are clearly targeting that community, but they have to charge the same volumetric flow rate for every community. So if they could lower that based on that, I'd like to work with them to see if they can do that. And then, because we can make the funds go there, but they're saying we can't reflect that in the rates. So we all have a lot of work to do. And looking for great ideas from all of you.
So just to run through, thank you so much. So just to run through the 5 elements quickly, so we're all on the same page. The first one that you see in front of you is, sort of overarching, because in addition to all of the issues that Michael just went through and Ellen around rates and, all these technical things, one of the most fundamental challenges around affordability is what are we investing in? So to put out one of allay fears, this is not intended to be, some sort of comprehensive review of water infrastructure investment, but a really high level conversation, a high level review of the types of investments that could make rates more affordable for everyone, but obviously for people who are more impacted from an economic perspective. So the idea there is to provide some thinking around that, because at the end of the day, it is what the utilities are investing in that does drive those affordability concerns. The second piece of it is to address this issue of customer assistance programs and barriers. Michael laid out a few things, and as I mentioned earlier, some of these barriers are not really barriers. It's very rare that there's a specific provision that says you can't have customer assistance. There are these issues around disparate rates and other things. In most places where we have examined these things, there are either language changes that could be made, or even ways of working with the existing language without seeking legislative changes. So the idea here of this piece of the charge is to really identify what are the common challenges. And we're looking here at state, public bond, statutes, maybe local charters, but really identifying in a clear way for EPA and for the state SRF programs, what are the primary legal barriers and what are not? What are the places where these perceptions have sort of overcome, but where there really are not legal barriers? Then the third piece gets into what Michael was just talking about, which is rate design. So what are the options for within where there are some barriers, some specific legal barriers? What are the options for rate design that can work within those barriers? Of course, you can always try to go to your legislature and change things, but what are the things you can do within the existing legal structure that has limitations? What are those creative options? So some of the things we're talking about were lifeline rates, income-based rate structures, that kind of thing. The fourth element is looking into how to structure the flow of SRF funds through rate structures or other mechanisms to address the additional subsidization funds that the EPA folks were just talking about, to make sure that they are getting to the places they need to go most effectively. And then finally, this last piece is, and what can EPA, how can we help EPA think about its role here, right? EPA is designed to not be directive here. These decisions are ultimately going to be made by the state SRF programs. So really thinking through, again, at a high level, what is the kind of policy, guidance or recommendations or something, along those lines that would recognize that the role is not directive, but still providing resources and information and the kinds of tools that might be helpful to the states as they're designing the way that they want to address these affordability challenges at the local level. So those are the 5 integrated elements. And I'll take 1 minute to talk about what we're thinking about in terms of deliverables, which is a fairly brief report. And Carrie and I were speaking, and I think she's come up with a really brilliant idea that's been used in other charges, which is to maybe do a series of webinars, bringing in, some of the experts that Michael was talking about, bringing in our friends at NACWA, at other resources, other folks and experts who've thought about these issues, and maybe do a series of 4 or 5 webinars. And those would be part of the deliverables themselves to really dig deep and explore these issues. And then the final deliverable would be a combination of those webinars, their slides, all of that, plus a relatively brief report addressing each of these elements at a high level. So that's a lot. So I think I'll pause there and see if there's questions. Oh, but I do want to be sure before we get to questions, Janet, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak to these issues.
Thank you, Cynthia. I don't really have much to add. I think you did a great job. I also appreciate Michael's comments about the SRF. And looking kind of not just at the system level, but, for non-designated or burden systems, thinking about how to address affordability challenges for households within those systems. So nothing else to add.
Great.
Thank you.
Any questions from the group? Jeff?
Thank you, Jeff Deal, Future Scope Advisors for the record. I guess this is a bit unusual because I am part of the work group, but having also run a state SRF, I just want to go on record to make sure that when the work group and then this board considers a number of these things, especially in the SRFs, that we're very cautious and conscious about putting some guardrails around the use of SRF and how it can be done. Greg talked about congressionally directed spending or earmarks. The proposal for the next year is for earmarks being funded by the base SRF program and taking roughly 96% of the funds. Now, in a state like Rhode Island, every dollar that's reduced of the fund from the capital that the SRF receives is an effective $3 reduction because of the leverage that the Rhode Island program runs. So increasingly, we're being focusing really on the supplemental bill funding. And as Michael said, there's significant subsidies in there, but we also have to remember that this is a defined time frame around this money. So that when recommendations go to EPA, we also need to be conscious of this supplemental funding isn't going to be there forever. And yet policies that may be created around this could live much longer than that supplemental money. And, the SRFs are kind of fighting right now to make sure that earmarks don't outlast the bill supplemental funding, because again, these programs are meant to be perpetual and continue to grow and supplement and be able to leverage capital as it comes back in for many of the programs, not all the programs. So I think we really need to be conscious and thinking about things that we recommend can be achieved, at least through the recommendations around the SRFs, that can be achieved, and the fact that if they live longer than the supplemental money, that they can be achieved through the program as it hopefully continues to survive earmarks after the bill supplemental funding.
I think that's a good point. I just want to be clear. So I think the SRFs are a piece of this, but not the main.
No, I understand. I was just, but
I
again,
agree.
that little part that I think we just need to be
I-
very conscious of
I
kind of the
completely concur.
dynamics that are going on in
Right.
SRF
Mike, do you
programs
wanna
right now.
Yeah, Carrie, thank you. Yeah, Jeff, absolutely. Just for the record, it's this is someone who manages the Clean Water SRF as well as the earmark program. We're talking about using, effectively using the SRF program long term, and so looking at how it can address those concerns that some people think have to be addressed through perhaps earmarks or others as well. Even after the additional subsidization of bill is gone, the bipartisan shall also institutionalize, the kind of the core additional subsidization for the clean water SRF from 10 to 30, a minimum of 10% up to 30%. We typically get 10% appropriation, that's what we call, so it could be 20 to 40%. We need to make sure that that is used effectively and judiciously, and so that the loan portion, that core loan portion of the program, it grows and perpetuates as well. So I think that's why it's important to try to target these subsidies as much as possible. So you get the right mix of additional subsidization, zero interest loans or low interest loans, kind of combined and mixed to meet the affordability needs of a particular community, particularly users within the community, so that you can effectively use the full SRF, including the loan. We call it additional subsidization for a very specific reason, because all SRF assistance is subsidized.
Right.
And we have to remind people of that a 0% loan, a 1% loan, increasingly in this interest rate environment, a 2% loan are all subsidies that are very, very effective. So that's part of the answer as well.
Mariana, and then I didn't see who, Sanjeev, and then Angela.
Yes, Mariana Hung PD with Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. I'm just gonna tack on a little bit to what Jeff said in respect to the SRF and definitely this charge. I do like the idea of doing a little bit more training and when it comes to user rates and how to make a bigger impact. But I do want to kind of express to the board a little bit when we talk about the subsidization. There's opportunities with interest rates, but then also dollar wise, if you look at, say, the base grant, not what I will possibly get next year is 300,000. Not much I can do with that, but if we're, let's say, traditionally with the SRF base grant, I kind of want to give dollar figures a little bit so we kind of understand what kind of impact can be made with some of this subsidization. So I have a $8 million base grant on a usual, before the earmarks. So if I'm giving, 20% of that, that's $1 million. But with the revolving fund, I look at my demand and what I'm actually lending out. I'm lending out maybe $50 million. And so I have $1 million of principal forgiveness I'm giving out. And I'm trying to make the biggest, impact of that $1 million, $2 million. And so it's not a save off. I'm trying to reduce the rates or make it as affordable as possible. But it's really, really hard to make an impact with $2 million. So again, with these, making sure we watch any policy calls that maybe that we would advise on, because it really can restrict and make it hard to actually get those dollars on the ground to make an impact to a wide range of applicants coming through, where I'm seeing $100 user rates for a whole community. And where sometimes some of these bigger communities, they can spread the wealth, but trying to advise of how they can make an impact to some of those disadvantaged folks within where they can kind of spread the wealth a little bit. And overall, the user rate impact maybe $30, $30 a month is what they're having, where I do have communities that have over $100 a month user rate. So getting some perspective of that and what can really be managed with the SRF. But I think there's opportunities and for us to kind of collectively come together and brainstorm and think of ideas of how we can advise and make an impact to people investing in these capital projects to reduce the cost, hopefully, and also make these projects happen, needed projects happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. Sanjeev?
Hi, guys. I'm Sanjeev Sinha with Corvius. I first wanted to mention that the write-up, at least from the perhaps maybe driven by the somewhat familiarity with the topic, because that's the world I come from, water sector. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Cynthia and Janet. Obviously, you guys did a very nice job crafting it together.
Thank you.
I also wanted to mention that Corvius just started a project, and I'm offering it to you as a resource, funded by the Water Research Foundation. Team members are Pacific Institute in California, in your neck of the woods, UCLA Luskin Center, and University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, EFC. The topic of that pretty much is the core of the charges 1 and 2. So we'd love to actually share whatever it is that we are finding. We have about 24 utilities that we are interviewing and working with. And obviously, we're not looking at items 4 and 5, but we could give you a lot of materials in 1 and 2. So when the time comes, if that's how we proceed, our pleasure.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Those are all folks we know and work with and have a lot of regard for. So that's fantastic. Angela.
Angela Brickmont, Denver Water. Kudos to everybody working on this, and Cynthia for trying to consolidate. This seems somewhat manageable, but it is a big scope. I would offer just an observation that with the low-income housing water assistance program, Denver Water is one of the utilities that has in its charter we cannot subsidize, and that somehow we scrambled and worked with the state to implement the LIWAP. And there are probably a lot of lessons learned in those states that deployed them, how they were able to do that. And, it happened. I'm still shocked that we actually made it happen, but it was so important to get those monies out there that even if the monies aren't there, having a plan for when they are, whether it's coming from the federal government, the state government, or even a nonprofit or foundation, that you have the systems in place. So I'm real excited to support you on this charge.
Great.
Thanks. And I think that's a great example of where there is a specific barrier. That's exactly the kind of thing we want to unearth and unpack and, daylight. It's great to know. And we'll definitely be calling on you for your resources as well.
So I don't want to cut off our conversation, but I am mindful of our time. I'm wondering, the board seems very engaged in this topic, so I'm wondering if the board feels ready to move to approve the charge and let the work group dig in and start on the work with EPA. Yeah, can I get a motion to approve the charge? So Jeff, and a second. Dave is thank you. Dave's on it. Great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yes, this is, I know you have a large work group and a very engaged work group. I think you've done a tremendous job putting forward a great plan for the next year.
And I just want to actually thank Janet as well as Cynthia and the EPA clients, because I know this is something that's been going on for months.
A long time.
A long time. So we really appreciate it. And I agree with Sanjeev, and I'm not even a water person, but that the document was just excellent. Thank you.
Very good. Yes. We're going to move to our next charge, the water reuse charge. Angela, you're going to take us through this.
Yes. So I think this is a little bit more straightforward in terms of scope than the one you just heard. And I'm going to read a portion of the purpose of the study, which came from the 2023 Appropriations Act. This is a study on the public benefit of a potential federal investment tax credit to support private investment in water reuse and recycling systems. So the charge is that specific and narrow, and there are essentially two questions that have been teed up by the work group from EPA for us to address. One is, what is the public benefit of potential investment tax credit? And this is for industrial facilities. And the second question is, what would be the optimal tax incentive structure to encourage innovation, whether that's one time or ongoing? And in terms of the deliverable, we're looking at a letter that walks through what the summary of the benefits are and potential policy recommendations on the tax incentives. I think similar to what Cynthia just described, there are interested parties in presenting and collaborating on this with us, and we might anticipate a series of webinars to engage those folks. You heard from the Water Reuse Association's Greg Fogel yesterday. Also, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is interested. And then just going back to, why is this an issue? Why is there a problem to solve? For those of you who maybe aren't in water and wastewater, particularly those of you maybe that aren't in the West, we don't have a lot of additional water to waste. And as told by many articles on the Colorado River. So even myself working at a water utility, we have a difficult time increasing the adoption and use of recycled water, which we do have a recycled water plant. And for those of you that set rates, you often have to look at what are the broader benefits, so that you can set a reuse recycled rate low enough that somebody will opt to take that. So adoption of those recycled and reused water options means we don't have to go out and buy extremely expensive water rights that don't exist anymore. So this is, again, it's very targeted on industrial adoption, and the two questions that we are looking to provide options and answers on. And I'd like to, I have had several conversations, the committee and I, with Justin, who I see is on from the EPA, and I'd like to see if I've missed anything, Justin, on the charge.
No, hi, hello everyone. Justin Mattingly with the EPA's water reuse program. And Angela, I think you summarized it very well. We certainly thank the committee and really EFAB as a whole for your consideration on this. And as Angela mentioned, this is really in response to a direct request, from Congress. And we really took that language and tried to focus it as best as we could. And Angela mentioned, thinking about really industrial facilities, but then industrial facilities adopting the use of both municipally provided recycled water as well as on-site water reuse as well. So like reusing some of their own processed water and some of their wastewater. So certainly thinking about the public benefits from a water supply perspective, but also potentially a water quality perspective, as this may decrease discharges from industrial facilities. But we also want to think about some of the potential externalities, both from a water quality as well as a public finance perspective as well. But again, Angela mentioned that this is very much of interest in places out west, in drought-prone states, but also on the East Coast as well. I mean, I'm in Northern Virginia, which is known as Data Center Alley. Data centers use a lot of water, and there's a lot of interest in the use of recycled water for data centers. But other types of manufacturing, I know there's a lot of interest in building up capacity to manufacture semiconductor chips. And there's been interest in some pretty water scarce areas of doing that. So again, very much appreciate your consideration on this.
I'd like to open it up to the members of the committee, if there's anything else that you would like to add. Dave?
Well, first off, I want to say thanks, Angela. I think this is spot on. This is what we need, not only because the appropriators asked for it, directed to get it done, but I think the importance, and I'll just give a quick example. Last week in the city I live, Tucson, our city council passed a resolution on our new water plan for the future, and water reuse and stormwater capture, water recycling are key to expanding our water portfolio in the West. We all know we're not going to get any more Colorado River water in the volumes we used to get, so we've got to expand the portfolio. This is spot on, and I know it's exactly what we need to do, so I totally support it.
Gwen?
Gwen Yamamoto, Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. So just for my clarification on Justin's comment, so there's a possibility of expanding it to more than just industrial. I'll give you an example. So in Hawaii, we have that Red Hills situation, which EPA is very much involved in. And we have a lot of hotels that use, drinking water to water plants. So is it just, so there's an opportunity to expand more than industrial?
So again, the charge, the request from Congress was to undertake a study on the public benefit of federal tax and credit to support private investment in water reuse. Now, we interpreted that as primarily for industrial facilities, but there are plenty of lessons that can be learned that can be applied elsewhere. Certainly while hotels and other development of that nature, it may require and benefit from private investment in water recycling, let's say things like stormwater capture. So again, there are lessons that can be learned, especially in regards to the public benefits of reuse, as well as impacts on different utility finances. But that may not flow down into an actual federal tax credit, so to say. Obviously, that would be entirely up to Congress. But I think that there certainly are opportunities to develop lessons that can be applied elsewhere as well. So again, this may not directly impact the question you have, but I think it can certainly provide some context and some very useful information.
So can I just weigh in on this just from a board process perspective? This is a discussion that you all are having with a client. The client is asking for something very specific, but both Dave and Gwen has brought up issues that could benefit also from the board weighing in, right? So should there be some sort of tax incentive that could actually change the game for commercial properties like what you're describing, Gwen? It doesn't preclude you from saying something. The Congress has, and I think Justin even pointed out that agency interprets what Congress's intent is here, and there are some specific languages, but you all are being consulted on this because you're the expert on this, but I think that Justin, I hope you also agree that it's really about looking at the tax incentives that could spur more investment in this area. So if there is if you think that there's actually a bigger or something that's as comparable on the commercial side, not just on the industrial side, I think you ought to consider that. And that's just a process. And I hope, Justin, you agree with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason why we've approached you all is that you have expertise that we don't necessarily have in-house at EPA. So we certainly want to hear from that expertise. So again, we can provide a lot of really good and hopefully helpful information going down this road. We can help connect with the various stakeholders who've already approached us. But we definitely want to hear about what your thoughts are as well. And again, we have a very narrow charge here, but if it would benefit from bringing in other perspectives from, let's say, the commercial sector, that's also great too, because that's the kind of information that I think would be helpful to Congress and other people looking to really think about actually developing a tax credit. It's one thing just to hear from us at EPA, it's another thing from hearing from folks working in the utility world, consulting world, and really have a much broader perspective in the water sector.
Dave Wagner, Wolpert Engineering, Academy of Science. Justin, just being as a former staffer on the Hill who wrote legislation, I would just suggest that before we dive in too deep, that you might want to talk to the committee staff just to get what their intent was, just to make sure we're meeting the intent of what the request was in the bill.
Fair enough. Good to hear.
Any other conversation? So before I ask for a motion on behalf of Angela, we would welcome additional participation in this work group. If there's anybody else that would like to get involved, please let myself or Tara or Angela know. I know that you would welcome additional participation. And
on that notion, so does the committee feel comfortable with having maybe a look at a broader sort of approach? Just because I would be delighted to participate, but I'd probably, considering that I'm New York based, would like to, look at it a little more broadly than the West. I just don't know if I'd be so useful. So.
Yes.
Yes, welcome to the committee. Very
Just one additional connection that I'm seeing from yesterday's discussion. This is, Lori, really a climate resiliency investments possibilities here as well. So I think there is a nexus there as well. So I think when this was proposed, when I saw this, I thought that
Ed was very excited.
I was very excited. This is revealing, and I was also not just very excited, but I saw the connections that many of you could have on this. It's not just a small group, but so. I would actually urge you to participate if you have some bandwidth on this, to join Angela to go on this issue.
Can I get a motion to approve the charge? Move approval. Okay, and then a second? Second. And Dave second. Excellent. All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Great work. Thank you to the entire work group and Angela and EPA. And we look forward to both of these charges. And if you're all pursuing webinars, we look forward to learning along with you. That'll be great.
Well, we're back on time.
We're back on
Amazing.
time.
But so since we're back on time, I have to share a little tip. Since I was so excited about the whole water issue.
Okay.
And I want to let Dave know it's not because of where I'm going to be living for the next year, but I will just say that in Seattle, I took a tour of the Climate Pledge Arena. And one of the things that they talked about that impressed me the most is it's the only arena that uses rainwater for the ice rink, which I thought was very, very impressive. And the ice was so pure, they had to actually add stuff to make it NHL quality. Anyway, so I just that's all. It's just, you can see why I'm so excited about water stuff. Anyway, Carrie, it's actually it's back to you here.
Yeah. So I think the one thing I wanted to bring up that we hadn't touched on yet, as we revisited a number of different work streams that were underway and revisiting some of our past work streams, is the exploratory work group that Gwen had been leading, and who else was involved in that? Eric Hangen, Gwen Yamamoto-Lau, Sonia, I think a number of folks have been involved in around, I don't even know what were we calling that? Community engagement, intermediaries?
Intermediaries, access.
Yeah. So it would be great to hear from the group about, where you all had gotten. I know that Ed and had been looking for a client, and that had not been successful yet. I know there had also been some discussion about incorporating some of the community engagement work into the water affordability charge. So I wanted to open it up to the work group members. I don't believe we have Gwen Keys Fleming on now, but for other work group members to give us a sense of where you got to, where you might like to see it go next.
And just to add, there are a couple of process things that went on with this, and I think this is also a lesson for the two work groups that are going forward to charge. We have a membership transition again in June, and I think it was Craig, actually. Holland was partnered with Gwen. So when members leave us and we have new members, when there's certain charge groups that are working on this, there's some impact on that. So this one was clearly affected by that. And I shared that, Angela, in particular with the water reuse, because I saw the timeline on it is to the end of 2024. And I think in June, we have another set of members that will be joining and leaving us. So just keep that in mind for the chairs, co-chairs. The second piece is that I think lots been going on in the agency that we talked about yesterday in terms of using intermediaries in different programs and so on. So one of the difficulties, there was one client who was interested in this, Ali Nunes from AIR program, but even in the AIR program, things are moving very fast in terms of trying to get all this money out that Greg pointed to. So there were, I think, Gwen and others, and when I talked to folks, there was difficulty in pausing to really think about how do we do the engagement piece, right? Because the whole idea was, can we get funding to folks who we've never funded, in the past, and I think we've had that conversation yesterday, Sonia, at dinner as well. So I think there were those two factors that affected this. But again, I think the conversation was long term. Was there any interest in the group here to engage EPA about basically the granting process in terms of how do we reach people that we have in communities that we have not reached previously. So I think that was the intent. But there were two complications, I think, that we should be able to overcome this time.
I don't want to put folks on the spot, but does anybody who had been involved in that work want to say anything?
Gwen Yamamoto, Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. So to Ed's point, I think a lot of things are moving quickly through EPA, and perhaps that particular charge was a little bit too specific on using intermediaries. I wonder, maybe not something that we decide today, but I wonder, based on yesterday's discussion, could there be value in exploring how we might help in facilitating collaboration amongst the different programs within EPA that are doing community outreach to disadvantaged communities, and to make it more effective, less of a check the box and more of a impactful. So I just leave that.
Is this something that we should try to facilitate, bringing the work group back together and have a discussion about, like, kind of where you might like to see things go next?
Sandra Favors from, where am I from? Alabama Department of Environmental Management. Definitely, just based on the conversations that we had last time, the conversations that have been going on at dinner and other places, as well as when we do get together, you're correct. I think last time there was passion behind the conversation when we initiated it, but not having a direction on where to go with it. It was just conversation, which lends itself to being always the problem when you talk about community engagement, and when you're talking about how to fund individuals that you haven't funded before, who don't have the capacity to understand how to apply or how to use those funds, right? So I definitely would encourage us to have meaningful engagement, to have a charge that is not so specific, but not extremely broad, where it's just us having soapbox conversations, but that we can have meaningful engagement so that they can actually implement it. The words that I used yesterday, which I totally forgot that you were going to borrow, but baseline of care. Thank you. A baseline of care. I think if we can develop something around that actually gives something meaningful that everyone who is going to engage with our communities can look to, I think that is a better way to design the charge. So I really hope that we can do that.
Do we, oh, Sanjeev, yes, sorry.
Hi guys, Sanjeev Sinha with Corvius. I just wanted to give a little bit of a different spin of what Sanya was saying, because I was very impressed with the comments that she made yesterday, and it really kind of made an impact on me. Baseline of care, you obviously indicated that today as well. Also building local capacity, because I think, to me, at the end of the day, infrastructure solutions, and actually I found the conversation that we had, comments that you made, so motivating that this morning, first thing I did after I got up was I looked up the EFAB's charge. And I just wanted to remind us for that, and I'm sure Ed probably remembers it well. The first is lowering the cost of environmental protection. Second is removing financial and programmatic barriers that raise costs. Third is increasing public and private contribution in environmental facilities and services. And fourth is building state and local financial ability to meet environmental laws. These are awesome, noble goals. There is nothing wrong with them, but we are in the this is 2023, an era where we have an administration that is pitching and making clear progress towards Justice 40. And I think the solutions to environmental challenges really should not be just about making an investment, hiring very large companies or small companies that just do the work and have no local workforce engagement capabilities. If it were up to me, and it is not, and I'm certain there is a whole process involved with it, I would actually add a fifth bullet to this that focuses on looking at the socioeconomic aspect of it. Lori was asking, and these guys did such a nice job this morning, Michigan Saves. The thing that really stood out to me was not so much the $500 million and everything else that they were talking about, which they did an awesome job conveying, was how the local contractors were the engine for the driver of the value add. And at the end of the day, I think EPA and pretty much everything that we do and we have the privilege of living in a society that has the resources, is to actually emphasize that part of investment should not, infrastructure solution investments should not be just about solving an environmental challenge. It must have a socioeconomic impact that helps underserved communities in a real way, not just buzzwords. Thank you.
Yeah, I just so you know that during the networking break, the reason that I came 6 minutes late, it was because I was talking to a group of folks about this, and the person that I like you, Sanjeev, the person that was most resonant for me, the conversation was with Jason Beal, the gentleman sitting at the end, and it wasn't because necessarily it was about equity issues. But the one thing that EPA and federal agencies and state governments and Sonia and I talked about this even at the county levels and so on, we just don't know how to do what he's doing and how that should impact us, right? The work that we're all trying to figure out what to do. So one thing that I would urge the board to consider is not to avoid exactly what Sonia is saying, that we don't have conversations about, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but changing the charter, because that is another where people are going to get on the soapbox, to just quote you, and talk about how righteous we should be about this, right? So what I suggest is thinking about and taking Carrie's cue on this about doing webinars and others. I'd love to hear more baseline of what Jason's of the world could share with the board, first and foremost, and then thinking about what are the kind of the approaches and the gaps that Jason's of the world could recommend to the board for you to look at, because to me, I don't even know what that is. And Sonia and I had a conversation over dinner, but my experience and what I shared with her about the best practices, my experience, and it's very limited. Sonia's experience is also from Alabama, and I think Joanne pointed out a lot of these things are very local, and there's a lot of good best practices that I hear from around the country. If there are things that our community kind of contractors and others could share with us that they see as a challenge in the financing world that could help them, I would really like to push on this baseline issue. And this is a monumental thing, I mean, to take on something like this, and it may not be just a 6 months thing. It may be perhaps one that will span a couple of membership periods, but it might be something that is worth taking on. But because I agree with Sonia, I don't think we should be continuing to talk about sort of equity issues in a matter of principle, but really about understanding what's happening in communities and what barriers they see with the markets and private funding, public funding, and then trying to see whether or not there are recommendations that you all, based on your experience and expertise, could make to EPA that could potentially help us do either better engagement or better granting. I mean, people have always said that we do terrible in terms of getting people on. That's why we're always looking for people we've never reached before, right? So anyway, that's my response to the charter discussion, because I think that gets into the category of something beyond in my mind. So not to say that I don't agree with you. So.
No, I forgive me. I'll just share just 2 sentences. I completely agree with you. The only reason why I mentioned that is more from a standpoint of emphasizing where our priorities really need to be. I would also say that in the spirit of the awesome talk that Lori led yesterday that generated a lot of passion among the board, there are examples that I can point out for us to actually consider. Maybe we should consider having a 1-hour time slot. I could actually bring in people for you from across the country that will share with you their own experiences that are really transformational. There are some federal agencies that are just not clued into it yet. It is coming. And I think we just need to be ahead of it because we are a national committee. Thank you.
And that process is in the charter for us to do that. So
let's see,
I think it was
Dave and then Dennis and then Sonia.
Thank you. I can't speak as eloquently as Sanjeev and Sonia have about the issue. I think it's exceedingly important. My thought is, where do we get a client? And I have two suggestions that we should look at within EPA, and they both reflect on the Justice 40 initiative that is ongoing through our legislation, and the initiatives that are going on in the White House through the Council on Environmental Quality, who I meet with periodically. And those two potential clients are the EPA has a program for colonias, which are unincorporated border communities. They have no representation. They have limited services at best. The other is our Native Americans, our indigenous populations, who again there's a program within EPA that deal with the tribal people. So I think maybe leveraging those various elements within EPA, we might be able to cultivate a client for this very, very important initiative. Thank you. Oh, Wolpert Engineering for the record.
Dennis Randolph, City of Kalamazoo. And I just wanted to add, because I'm in a battle right now with this particular problem, that participation is the thing. It's what we want. We want to get input. But when I have state level agencies developing projects and then manipulating NEPA to get away from engagement, I think the whole system falls apart. So I think in any work that we do, we still need a lot of effort to make sure people do the right thing. And they don't use a great tool like NEPA to evade talking with people, because they're still doing it today. And it shocks me, since NEPA's been around so many years. So I think that's a big part, and it's a base part. If we don't even want to talk to people or give them an opportunity, then we never get to the next step.
A lot of what I was, Sandra Favors, Alabama Department of Environmental Management. I want to get these rules together. So a lot of what I wanted to speak on has already been addressed, but I want to say that this meeting was very impactful for me, because you had people outside of the agency to speak to us about real life application. This last group, the energy from Zoom, oh my goodness, very passionate. That changes the game. Her energy, we all should go home with today. And it was meaningful. I mean, literally, as they were talking, I was going through to see if I had some program like that in Alabama. That's what we need for us to start thinking outside the box. For this charge to go forward anywhere, we all have to be committed to think outside of the box. I'm not a finance person. You guys don't even know how impactful you've been on my personal life, so that I can start trying to ask the right kind of questions for my own meager funds, and how I can move things for my community and my family. Having representatives that come from a variety of places, a variety of backgrounds, is how we definitely engage appropriately to develop something that's going to be useful, not just in Michigan, but across the United States. Things in Alabama and in the Southeast are going to be different than they are in California, than they are in New York. And so having a representative, and it was good to hear that you could bring somebody in. I don't know if it's an hour, I don't know how much time we can commit to that, but listening to it, those individuals that were here today brought something to the table that engaged us all. And we were sitting there wanting to hear more, wanting to know how they made that so successful in such a short period of time. When we look across this room, diversity is still something that we struggle with, even on our committees, correct? I've been doing this for 27 years. I'm used to being the only beautiful brown sugar in a room, so it doesn't really bother me. But I can tell you, if I take you to some of the communities that we work in, most of you will not be comfortable when you initially get there. That's just human nature. That doesn't make you a bad person. So bringing that to the conversation, yes, Jason was wonderful, but knowing that that was a very diverse group of people from all different backgrounds that came together to make something happen for Michigan is what we need to do everywhere. So learning that model, bringing others in to talk about everything. Webinars are so important. If we can do that for this charge, especially, people will sit and listen. Now, they're going to be like me. They're going to need to listen 3 or 4 times. So we need to record it so they can go back and be able to get someone locally to help them navigate through the process that we can't stand. I don't like our processes, and I work in this. So imagine someone that really needs help trying to go through this. So community engagement with every charge that we've done makes no difference if we don't get that part right. So if we could make sure that we always have wonderful individuals who can come in and just shed light on something a little bit differently. There's a lot of money in the pipeline right now. Dennis said a mouthful when he said, we can navigate how to not talk to people. But aren't we here to talk to people so that we can make everyone's life better, including our own? Conversation, I like to talk, so it's not a big thing for me, but most of my staff doesn't. So how can we do that? Community engagement is the biggest thing that, and you can tell I'm really passionate about it. But I just really want us to really focus on having more of that we had today, because I left here much better than I was when I got here this morning. I really appreciate that.
That's great, Sonia. Mariana, Ashley, and then Mariana, and then I think I want to wrap it up with some thoughts on this.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Ashley Allen, I2 Capital. I just wanted to add my willingness alongside Sanjeev and others to help bring together some of those really good local examples where it's working. Mine are more on the rural development side, as I think you know. So I don't know that that's quite as relevant, but well, it is. Thanks, Ed. Both tribal and rural. And I mean, yeah, there are pockets where it's working. And it's gritty and hard, but there are pockets and we've got to lift those up. So thanks for the conversation.
Mariana, thanks, Ashley.
Mariana Hung Peavy with Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. I know David kind of mentioned a possible partner with some of the EJ40 groups, but I also think this sounds really similar to some of the discussions we had with technical assistance. So I don't know if there's some opportunities there to blend some things, because in order to make some changes, whether it's, drinking water, wastewater, we need to get the community behind these projects to make things happen. So I just wanted to lay that out there as well.
This has been a really exciting conversation. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, the community engagement piece. I'm wondering whether we can call for additional volunteers who want to get involved. I would love to get involved as well. And I wonder if we come together, we brainstorm a topic, and we'll see what our EPA colleagues think about this. Could EFAB sponsor a spotlight series on what's working with financing models across media? I don't think of media, I think of sectors, but across all the media that do have federal dollar components, because we're a federal agency, FACA, that have financing, that are engaging communities, building local wealth through local contractors, building capacity through TA, through things that, stick around, through O&M and engineering. And maybe this is something we do for a couple of years, and maybe we do it, every other month, and maybe we don't have a client per se. Maybe we're out there hustling to get EPA agency folks to come along and come to the webinar and learn. And maybe it's not even your media, but learn. And but we're bringing these examples together where there is federal money, EPA money, maybe other examples, and lifting these examples up. Who said that? Somebody said lifting these examples up and spurring conversation maybe something more concrete comes out of it for a charge. But that's something that I would love to, you know, get involved with the work group and socialize.
And just
Thoughts on
to,
that?
yeah, just to add what, as you were talking about this, one thought that one question that Gwen Keys Fleming asked in DC to, I think it was Jalan, do I have her name?
Oh, Jalan Newsom White.
White, yeah, she was the environmental
White
justice White House lead
Mhm.
at CEQ. And the question that she asked, which is relevant for this discussion, is she said to Jalan, are you having engagement with the private sector? You know, they were doing lots of listening sessions, and I think Jalan said that she was thinking about doing that, but they hadn't at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
I think it's really related to what you're talking about is,
And these are the examples, Sanjeev.
yes,
actually, what
Sanjeev, and
Michigan
yeah,
State-
and also
what
somebody, yeah.
Yeah, what I think this board does so well at is bringing that public-private together.
Yeah, and I think so, there's a role to play, and I think we would have to, you know, I'm gonna have to go back and think about how we can support something like this, but the idea of at least getting the community, the projects that are working at the local level. That's not something that EPA as a federal agency, you know, we in the regions we're familiar with, but not everyone's familiar with that. So that's why also I think what Jason was talking about was so compelling, right? I mean, because you can actually understand how we're helping with the federal policy tools. At break, what I asked him was, what do you see as barriers still? And, you know, he and I were talking about the PACE program. Right. And so that's where I think that's the second step. You know, we have these conversations, and I love the idea of bringing together best practices, but those best practitioners are likely to also be able to identify,
To speak to.
some of the sort of national policies and state policies and local policies. that
Missy
are-
was great, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
she
she-
gave us a like, this is all good, but let me tell you something that wasn't.
working. And then the question for EFAB is, are those things that are in your lane, you know, for this advisory committee to tackle it? Because many of those challenges may not be the things that this advisory committee deals with. But then we could get a situation where it is something that, as our deputy administrator has asked all of you to do, is to collaborate with NEJAC or the farm. I can never remember their name, the Farm Advisory, FRCC. And so I think there is a path forward on this, but that will address the point of us not having kind of a conclusion to this work project. So maybe instead of saying years, we propose a group of us or group of folks that I say us, EPA, to help also to do what we did for pollution prevention. Ashley, I think, was a pioneer in this, to get and take up on Sanjeev, for instance, do a session on a particular sector or media, and has to be at the fence line at the local level, what happens on the ground, and then you know, start sharing that information, and hopefully that'll lead to some information baseline of knowledge for this group to be able to address some of the challenges that are going to come up from that. I mean, I think that's a great path forward, but you know, but I'd like to reserve saying yes to EPA commitment until, because we're not going to have a client. This is really a board activity. That I'd like to, you know, to make sure that we have the funding and the budget and for
So maybe
webinars.
we should
and so on.
reconvene the work group, the exploratory work group to explore this further.
Right, and because the work group could then work on what types of, you know, sectors and what types of webinars would be appropriate and so on. And that's what the work group members will be doing, not creating any charges. So I think so this will be a working group.
Yes. Well, a continuation of.
The working group, right? And Ashley has a good model for this because she did, this is what you did for the pollution prevention.
Yep.
Does it mean
All
that
right.
she gets to join again? No, I
Could
don't
be,
know.
I mean, and anyone can join.
Oh, she's
exploratory
raising her
work
hand.
groups.
I
There you
love
go.
that. Thank you.
Dave will join, great. If anybody else wants to join, reach out to myself or Tara, and we'll get something scheduled, and with Gwen Keys Fleming too.
Yeah, and
She'll
Gwen,
involve.
and I also now not want to not forget what Cynthia Kohler and her group offered on the affordability piece is that I'm hoping that there is some success Michael, the folks back there, where the affordability issues have been addressed in communities. I mean, because I know you are all just talking about the barriers at this point, but are there places where you're seeing as best practices? It would be great to get a session on water affordability.
Should have been clear about that. The idea of addressing the barriers was to address how to overcome barriers.
Right. Well, I don't think I have any other items. This has been a very engaging 2 days. I think it's been great to bring in outside speakers to really generate discussion. So I think that's something that we'll try to incorporate going forward. And please do, you know, if you have ideas on topics, things that we think the board should learn more about, please do let us know. So there's some work involved in putting these meetings together. So I think with that, thank you so much. And thank you as always to our EPA colleagues who have been so gracious and dedicated in their support of us and pulling us all together. And thank you to the city of Ann Arbor and Michigan and Ed for bringing us here. And for those of you, Sanjeev, who hosted us.
And I just want to thank, I can't thank you enough. You know, I say this every meeting, but you all do this on your own time. And you travel far, and I know it takes time to travel, and this is your, I don't know, not even nighttime job. This is purely public service and service to the country. And I really do appreciate, and on behalf of all of us at EPA, we really appreciate the work that you do on EFAB. I know this meeting, I was particularly impressed with everyone's, I can tell that you all are in sync now. And so I really appreciate that as well. So just want to thank you for joining us and looking forward to all the work ahead of us as well. So thank you, and I'll close the meeting.
Close the meeting. Thank you.
Do you want to talk about this afternoon, though? What you want?
So we have the room, Tara, is that right?
Yeah, we'll close the live.